Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. In our today's class, we are going to discuss a very important topic, and that topic is relative clauses. Relative clauses are the clauses which function in a sentence as adjective clauses. So, relative clauses are also called as adjective clauses because they used in a sentence in a way that they describes a noun, and we know that it's a function of adjective to describe a noun. So when the whole clause, a dependent clause, is used in a sentence in a way that it describes the noun, it is called a relative clause, and it is also called an adjective clause. And it always starts with a relative pronoun. Relative pronoun, we know that it comes after a noun and refers to the noun which comes before it. Relative clauses are the words like what, when, where, which, and these relative words which start with WH, they are also sometimes functioning as relative adverbs. Well, relative adverbs are used in a sentence to show a time or a place. So that when these WH words are used in a sentence for functioning as relative adverb, they show time or place, and the information they provide can either be essential or non-essential to the completeness of the sentence. Now, dependent clauses, when they are used as adjective clauses or relative clauses, they give information about the noun, they describe the noun, and that knowledge may be essential, and sometimes it is not non-essential as well. But in both the ways, it is used to complete the sentence. Relative pronouns or relative adverbs. Relative pronouns are used to help clarify who or what a sentence is talking about. Else extra information about, give extra information about the person or thing. Like other pronouns, they have the grammatical function of nouns and can either be subject or object of the relative clause. There are 5 common relative pronouns. As I already told you that in relative clauses, relative pronouns are used, and they are used in the beginning of dependent clause. Who, whom, which, whose, that. Here are some examples of relative clauses introduced by relative pronouns. There's the woman who sits next to me on the bus. Now, which woman is discussed in sentence? The woman which sits next to me on the bus. So, a woman who sits next to me on the bus, who sits next to me on the bus is a dependent clause, and it describes the woman, which is a noun. So, in this way, we can say that dependent clause used in this sentence is a relative clause, because it starts with relative pronoun who, and as it describes women, we can say that it's a adjective clause as well. Now coming to other sentence, the women whom the man whom I had heard so much about gave an electrifying speech to the crowd. Now, the man whom I heard so much about. Now, he is talking about the man about which he had heard something. So, this whom I had heard so much about is an adjective clause. It's a relative clause because it starts with whom, that is a relative pronoun. And the man is the noun about which the description is given in the form of relative clause. The escaped giraffe, which had been on the loose for weeks, was finally captured. Now, giraffe is a noun and which had been on the loose for weeks. Now, this is the information, extra information about the giraffe. So, which had been on the loose for weeks. It's a dependent clause and it is used here in a sentence as relative or adjective clause because it gives description, information about giraffe. The book that I wrote is being published in January. So which book? That I wrote. We describe that I wrote is a description about the book. So that I wrote is adjective clause and it starts with that, which is the relative pronoun. Any student whose desk is not clean will have detention after class. Now, what kind of a student will have detention after the class? The students whose desk is not clean. So there is a description given of the student whose detention will be observed after the class because his desk is not clean. So whose desk is not clean is the relative clause because it's information about a noun, that is the student, and whose is relative pronoun in this sentence. Now, relative clauses are also introduced with relative adverbs. Relative adverbs, on the other hand, are used when the information relates to a place, time, or the reason an action took place. Like many other adverbs, they modify a verb in the sentence. The relative adverbs are where, when, and why. When a relative pronoun or adjective, relative pronoun or a relative clause or a relative adjective is used in a sentence in a way that it shows a place, it shows time, it shows the reason of any action, then we can say that it has in its beginning the relative adverb, not the relative pronoun. The house where I was born. Now, the where refers to the house and house is a noun. But you cannot say that where is a relative pronoun in this sentence because where shows the place and it's a function of adverb to show the place. So here the word where shows the place and it's a relative adverb. And the whole clause where I was born is a dependent clause which gives us information about the house. So where I was born is adjective clause or relative pronoun. The house where I was born is a very special place where modifies the verb noun. Now coming forward, I love casual Fridays when we get to wear jeans to work. When they get to wear jeans to the work on Fridays. So he loved that Friday. Which Friday? When they get to wear jeans to work. So there is a description of Friday when they are allowed to wear jeans for the work. So in this sentence, when is a relative adverb which is in the starting of the adjective clause or a relative clause, and when modifies the verb where, and it shows time here, so it's a relative adverb. The last sentence, I don't know why he got so angry. I don't know why he got so angry. Now here the reason is asked of getting angry. So as we already learned that when there is a reason to be asked about any action, then we say that why is a relative adverb. So here the whole independent clause, why he got so angry, is the adjective clause and it has why in its beginning, that's a relative adverb which modifies the verb get and asks the reason. Well, here's a note. Whom is becoming increasingly rare in modern English outside of formal writing or speech, although it is technically correct to use whom when it functions as the object of clause and who when it functions as the subject. It is much more common to use who in both cases. So in some cases when whom function as object of the